Hello, everybody, and welcome to our panel here on your one-stop guide to Japanese horror games. We're Nerds to Know Media, as the signs can tell. If you want a card, feel free. We would appreciate a subscription on YouTube if you like what we do. We host a podcast out of Phoenix FM once a week, and we have a bunch of shows on YouTube as well. So my name is Dara O'Connor, and we're going to let the rest of the lads introduce themselves.
Oh, me?
Yes.
Okay. My name's Cian. I'm a drama teacher and a parent, as we can see. And I know not much about horror games, but I'm looking forward to having nightmares. Thank you.
My name is Kev, and like a cat, Cian fed me scraps at the door, and I've been here since.
Yeah. So so basically the goal of today is we're going to go through Japanese horror tropes into major video games. I'm going to give you guys some recommendations, and then also its influence on modern horror today. So if you are a big fan of PS2, you're in the right place. If you're not, you're probably going to want to buy a PS2 after this.
How do you rate Roblox horror?
How about this? Yeah.
That's just capitalism.
So, So this panel is going to explore the history, the key titles, unique elements, and cultural impacts of Japanese horror games. In different ways. So some of the games we're going to be talking about is Siren. So Forbidden Siren from 2003. The Fatal Frame series or Project Zero, depending which part of the world you're from. Silent Hill, Quan, Rule of Rose, which is very expensive. Totally worth it. It's like €80 to buy new.
Emulator.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but like to buy it, it's crazy expensive, but it's totally worth it. And then Siren Blood Curse, which is also...
Sorry, can I just say, we, for legal reasons, we do not suggest you emulate anything in a horror game.
No.
In the game sense or any other sense.
I will say, if you want to ask questions, you totally can. We have a mic there for it, because this is going to go out on the radio, so just so you know. Okay, so horror video games, we're going to have a talk about Japanese horror in general. So it's not the same thing as like... we can't talk about video games without actually defining how Japanese horror works. It's very different to how we would perceive horror in the West or even in Ireland, but there are some overlaps, particularly with folklore and stuff like that as well. So Japanese horror tends to focus on psychological horror, tension building, suspense, supernatural devices, and basically ghosts and poltergeists are a huge thing. And it all comes from folk religion. So it's actually very similar to the way Ireland has its own like fairies or vampires and like that. They're all similar, but the unique take specifically from Japan is why we have survival horror. You know, when as it was filtered through, it kind of became like resource management and all that kind of stuff. So keep that in mind as we're going through. So there's elements that you're going to constantly look at: exorcism, possession, precogs, and ghosts. And also just kind of being overmatched by something that you can't find.
And can I ask then, why do those elements particularly come from Japan then, and not other parts of the world?
The slide answers it.
I can't tip my head back that far.
So
You get the figure.
the reason why is, and I think it is kind of related to here as well, it's got to do with religion. Like Japanese folk, Shinto and Buddhism is a big part of Japanese life. So having that so interlinked with its culture, again, it's wild that it's so different, but it's so similar to Irish as well. If video games were bigger in Ireland with developers, I can't believe it hasn't been made yet. They would have made games based on our folk religion, folk tales through religion. But
Yeah, there's massive neurosity in how both like kind of classic Irish culture and classic Japanese culture have like a respect for the home and objects in the home.
Exactly, and ancestors as well.
Yeah.
And that's why ghosts are such a big thing. So instead of going in all guns blazing, we'll get to that. But
Yeah.
in early Japanese culture and through video games, it's very slow, it's very building, and again, like I think it comes from that respect rather than just we're just going to gun down everything.
There is a lot of that, not to kind of divert to it, there is a lot of that in YA at the moment. Like a friend of mine, Deirdre Sullivan, she writes a lot of kind of Celtic sort of like fantasy horror stuff. Yeah. And there's a lot of books like The Calling and stuff, which I think that influence is coming out, just not in Irish video games, you know?
For sure. Well, look, I know it's a bit of an aside, but it is something to think about because like as we're going to see through this, the whole idea of this kind of Japanese culture coming through video games was kind of by accident, and then it became a thing. So there definitely is a lot of overlap. But there's a couple of, we're going to put these slides up on the website and then also underneath the video of this. So as you can see, these are certain things that happen in the folklore side of things where it's like inanimate objects, as you said, Kev, it's a big thing. Household objects are a big thing. And then ghosts relate to certain places. So schools, back rooms, certain streets, they're all represented through the folklore of Japan. And then they found a way through into video games, which is why the house setting is a big thing. And it's kind of mirrored, as we'll see later on, but it's important to bear these things in mind.
Yeah, for like kind of like a more kind of like modern kind of showing of that sort of idea of ghosts inhabiting kind of fairly mundane objects is the really popular kids cartoon Yokai Watch. Okay. Like that's the yokai is that kind of very classical Japanese ghost. So like the whole premise is if you leave an object abandoned and destitute in like your home for long enough, a spirit will inhabit it.
Yeah.
And eventually it will haunt you like a cursed umbrella, as you can see up there. And like and Yokai Watch is kind of like it's as if using that then as Pokemon.
You get that with tarot as well. You have to put it on a high shelf and wrap it in cloth. Otherwise, the energy will leak out, you know?
Yeah.
Precisely.
Yeah. So when you're looking at like Japanese horror tropes or early video games, even some of the later ones, but specifically whatever it was in between 2003 and 2007, you just got peak games when you were really focused in on this. And it was a very, very clear expression of culture through an emerging medium. Okay, so again, as I said, the main difference between a horror game that you get from the West, not influenced with Japan, and obviously Japanese horror are these. It can be boiled down to this. So, as a ghosts are a big thing. Modern technology can help you. In a lot of games like Rule of Rose or Fatal Frame, you're usually walking around with some kind of camera or some kind of technology, and it doesn't help. Which is why survival horror is what it is. And then it can also be exploited, as Kev says, even modern technology can be exploited through ghosts. In your traditional horror game in the West, it's going to be, you're going to have jump scares. You're going to have no coverage. Doesn't matter where you are. It can be an abandoned place. The vengeful spirit is there, but it's more embodied rather than disbodied. Death by sex and the final girl. So these are kind of things that we see in movies as well, but do find a way in horror games coming from the West. So we have our first game we're going to talk about, or two games really. The first real Japanese horror game, and it does kind of hang a lot we talked about, is Sweet Home. Sweet Home is from 1989, and then Clock Tower. So
yeah, John Tron has a video on this as well. Yeah.
I'm going to play a clip of Clock Tower.
Should my daughter cover her eyes?
Clock Tower.
We're talking 1990s graphics. It was scary maybe 30 years ago. Now it's just kind of goofy.
But, I mean, this is very early on. This is one of the first games that have it. And you can see that it's super slow building. It's tension. And even with its very mundane core graphics by our standards, it's still filled with an awful lot of dread. So, a couple of things to bear in mind here. You don't have a weapon. You're completely outmatched. Just saw something really crazy.
And really heavy shoes by the sound of it.
Absolutely. And that's kind of, that would set the baseline for how this genre would develop.
And again, that's an evolution. Like that's about 6 odd years after Sweet Home, which was a point and click adventure.
Exactly. The weird thing of this is like we're part of a generation that saw video games go from text-based to VR, which is what we have now. And like, yeah, that's an evolution. That's the first real survival horror game. Clock Tower. You know?
Yeah.
And that's a being remastered as well. That's the original graphics there. So it's not
so many pixels.
Crispy.
So yeah, as you said, after Sweet Home and Clock Tower, it kind of ruminated for a little bit. And then we start getting the big heavy hitters around PS1 era. So what about mechanics became a big thing. So limited resources, slow pacing, As a point and click can happen as well, but
that's by this point we're into like the PlayStation 1 side, where a lot of like modern game mechanics as we know them have started being canonized.
But even if you think about it as well, like it wasn't just, we made fun of the point and click Sweet Home. That was still brought in because in Resident Evil, you're still point and click resource management the whole time. So that never actually went away. You just kind of got a bit more refined and the graphics went up. But with Silent Hill, does anyone know how Silent Hill happened? How it was developed? By mistake. Basically what happened was
knock it off a shelf. Oops.
Yeah, so Team Silent were basically the flunkies of the company, and like, just go make
Konami.
Yeah, like just go make whatever you want. And they turned out to make what defines the genre for a lot of people, Silent Hill 1, and then Silent Hill would obviously be, we'll get to that, but Konami accidentally made the most psychological horror game of its time. And so if you haven't played Silent Hill, go and play Silent Hill. Kev, what would you stand out or?
I haven't played Silent Hill.
Okay, no. You don't.
So,
no,
yes.
No. Okay, how do you make a game by accident?
No, like as in you put like a bunch of the lowest ranking people, like social pariahs and outcasts, just in the basement of the 1990s Konami office with no oversight.
Like they weren't aiming for Sonic and Mist or something, like
these are guys that were maybe QA testers on like Symphony and
right.
And we're told, no, you've done a bad job. Go into the hole. and then they turned out this just cerebral mind mess.
Okay.
Fatherhood.
So they weren't directed to do it.
What's interesting about this, because there was no guide, there was no like, go and do this. They were allowed to just kind of free flow it. And that's how you have a pure distillation of all this like folklore and mythology as it does.
So it's a little bit like the way when indie games started coming out on Steam, suddenly all these new avenues for gaming storytelling started, if just because of these scrappy underdogs.
Don't get me wrong, it's also jank as hell. Listen, they made a masterpiece. It's busted.
But most games are like that, to be fair. Most good games. So the development from there would be, we kind of saw this stuff moving into the modern era. The modern era isn't that modern. PlayStation 2, Xbox, into the PlayStation 3 and stuff like that as well. So this is where the genre was kind of codified and became canon as such. So your main ones are your Silent Hill, as we'll talk about in a second, Fatal Frame, and then Forbidden Siren, and then The Evil Within is probably the most recent one on the list we're going to discuss. But Silent Hill really reached its peak with Silent Hill 2, where there was a bit more direction and it went more into internal trauma rather than just folklore. So there's a bit of a change. Resident Evil became an action game.
It's a funny thing as we're talking about like how Japanese horror was kind of rooted. Resident Evil started taking a lot more Western influence as it developed. Yeah. Until, Resident Evil 4, Leon Kennedy becomes John Rambo.
Literally. No, and that's what's interesting because, up until this point, we said Japanese this and blah, blah, blah. When it got popular in the West met its impact. And then we start getting more, Resident Evil 4 was supposed to be, become, Devil May Cry. Same engine.
Yeah.
And that's very, very action orientated. So you can see this kind of creeping in. But the most pure one on this list from that time period is Project Zero. Now, if you haven't played Project Zero, you're a girl or a set of girls with a camera, and your whole goal is to walk around and try and capture ghosts from your house. Now, it's very simplistic. I've simplified it down a bit. There are like themes of rituals and that kind of stuff. It's very, very good, but it's extremely creepy, and you'd never feel secure when you're playing, which is like why I love the Fatal Frame series so much. You never feel at ease. You never feel like you're okay. When you're playing Resident Evil, you're like, I have this big gun, it's going to be okay, But it loops back around, Kev, on Kim, because The Devil Within is a Japanese game after all these ones have been brought back in, and it's pure horror again. So it does loop back around.
I think there is an element where I think like because it was Tango Gameworks.
Yes.
And I can't remember her name. I feel like they're really like Evil Within was very much almost an homage to classical Resident Evil because a bunch of ex-Resident Evil developers did work on that.
They did, yeah, absolutely did. But that's what I'm saying. It looped back around. So it came back in vogue where they're like, okay, we've gone too far. We've course corrected too much. And yeah, let's bring this back down to the bare basics. So the way the evil within is very, very good.
Well, then, can I ask then, why, considering what the gaming market was in the PlayStation 1 era, why did people... Well, PlayStation 2, either way, kind of late 90s, early 2000s, why did this catch on?
I think it's because it was just so different. I mean, like, when you're one... It's like the same thing in the last panel we did. So this is a follow-up to a panel we did a couple of years ago, called the Japanese J-horror's influence on Western video games. And that was all about what Joaquin is saying. Basically, it started a trend that was completely different. It was just the right time, right place, but also people in the West had never seen anything like that before.
Yeah.
So when it came in, it was like, well, this is completely different. And I don't know about you, when you guys are watching stuff, or even you guys in the crowd, when you're watching a horror movie from the West, you can, and it's not a very good one, you can predict when the scares are going to be. You can predict, right, here's the jump scare here, this is the villain here, blah, blah, blah. But then you're watching something maybe from Korea or Japan or whatever. It's like, I don't know what's going on. And it's that unique.
Like, the tropes are off, the beats are off. Like, yeah.
Put house in front of somebody and say, predict what's happening.
Okay, so some unique elements, as we said, in the game specifically. Psychological horror. Emphasis on creating a sense of dread, unease, rather than jump scares. So there aren't very many jump scares in Japanese horror. There's a few, but they are earned. It's not like, scary thing. It's like
the Five Nights at Freddy's style. Yeah.
Freaking. It's not like Five Nights at Freddy's, where it's just a cheap jump scare. Atmospheric storytelling. So the environment and everything you interact with has a story. Culture and influence, we've talked about that, and innovation mechanics. So again, to go back to why it was so popular, is because mechanics were like first of its kind in the game. Okay, so I'm going to play a clip of Afraid of Frame 2, so you can see what I'm talking about. So if you're looking for a recommendation, Afraid of Frame 2 is a must play. It's also called Project Zero, but it's a must play if you're into this kind of thing. Horror here isn't from there's going to be a random jump scare. It's because it's so disorientating.
The sense of dread. Yeah.
You can't run away. The only way is to go forward into it. So it's unreal like anything else you can play. And it's an entire game of this, which is just wonderful.
Mm.
Compared to if you load up the game at a similar time from like Thing, that's actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But the thing is, a Western game obviously based on the movie, and it tries something like this, but just can't match that atmosphere. So hopefully our screen won't go.
Like the popcorn throwing moments, yeah.
Another one, and a kind of case study that sums us all up together, is Siren. But first, it was in the PS3 era, so a little bit more advanced. But it starts to introduce weapons. But the reason why, even though you have a gun, you have a revolver, you're still at a loss because of a thing called sightjacking, where you're not actually able to kill what's chasing him. You're able to just put it down for a second, but it's still going to keep coming. So you have to keep moving. So you can't just stand there or fight it, which is an interesting way to do it. But if you haven't played Siren Blood Curse, do. It's really, really good. And it's from the third person perspective as well. So
and you see that particular influence. I know I'm jumping ahead a bit, but like my daughter here, she loves watching the likes of Cookies for C, kind of the Roblox horror games that are made in the last 2 or 3 years on the internet. And they're all structured around, you're in a burger place, you have to deliver the thing to the car, something's going to get you, but you have to, it, like you said just there, forces you to walk towards the danger, but doesn't give you any tools to deal with it. So that's still felt now,
Yeah, but it's funny because it's gone through the lens of a very Western thing, which is a burger place.
Yeah. What was that game called, Prim? Do you know? If you think I'll put your hand up, because that was it. Kind of all these Roblox, kind of and not just Roblox, but all the sort of new wave of horror things. It all sounds like it's built on that template,
It seems to be. And it's funny because, not only did we get that, that's now shown itself. It's kind of looping back around. It's that we have shooter games. So the traditional Western action genre now has moved further. And that was all started by this game. So I don't know if anyone has played Fear before, but Fear is absolutely unbelievable. It's an FPS, it's a first-person shooter, but filled with intense horror. There's bits where you're just walking through and you can't do anything. Despite the fact you're a super soldier, marine, you still can't do anything. And it feels like Silent Blood Curse in lots of ways, but then it also has really good shooting sections. It's quite actiony. It is very, very good. Around this time as well, we also had Slender. Probably good to remember Slender. And then the SPC Foundation game as well. So they're all very, very similar. Like you can, and even Alien Isolation as well. You can see here that like these 3 games all take directly from what we've talked about so far with Japanese horror, where it's changed the game to use a lame phrase, but it really, really has. And what I mean here is, so here's just some scary moments from Fear, and this is after maybe 4 years of Japanese horror really, really taking hold. So moments like that, then you will get your jump scare. If we let for a little bit longer, you get your jump scare.
Yeah, but like as you're talking about the collision of East and West, like, I mean, that has a cinematic element, which, you know, obviously I'm sure there's other examples, but like the famous Jaws thing of like, you only get glimpses of the thing until right at the peak of the horror. And that's because the game is like able to be a bit more visually engaging. You have that too, and Alien Isolation has that as well. So you hear it, you see a tail, you see it in the shadows, all that's kind of blending together, isn't it? Like,
absolutely, and that's why I put in Alien Isolation there, because I think Alien Isolation is actually the perfect crescendo of that. Because like Fear is great, Fear 1's fantastic, but even that genre kind of loses its way. And then you have Fear 3, which is just straight up multiplayer action game, which is good, but it's not what it was. Alien Isolation, if you guys haven't played that, totally worth your time, because it does, as Keane says, it does have that I literally cannot kill this alien thing.
And it's not just that, like, not to get too specific, but it takes about 30 seconds of standing still to save the game.
Yeah.
So it's constantly forcing you to stay still against your will, or like opening doors takes ages, all that kind of stuff, like, you know.
What's interesting is like in Japanese horror, it's a folklore resource management based thing. With Alien Isolation, they've taken a lot of the beats from it, but wrapped it in modern sci-fi. But as you said, how do you force someone in the future to feel terror? Well, take away all their weapons. As you said, make them save manually. It takes a while. You physically have to go over and do it every time. And then also, like, you can't see what you're fighting.
Yeah.
It actually is genius.
And that's like a thing in movies too, as well, where it's like, you know, someone drops their keys, they're trying to go in the front door because they can feel something. It's you're trying to do something simple but involved.
Yeah.
But you're panicking. Yeah. Like, you know, like.
And even still, like, to go back to the tropes that we talked about, like, it is still very tropey. Like, it has a final girl kind of thing. It is an open space, even though it's a very confined space. If you haven't played Alien Isolation, it's a tough play. It is a scary game. I'm not going to lie. It's probably one of the scariest games that we've talked about so far. And it's because it really gets that balance quite well. Slender is still pretty good if you haven't played it. And SCD is always like.
But then again, like earlier, don't you have to like? Is that the one where you find pages stuck to the trees?
Yes, correct.
Yeah, so it's a task. It's forcing you to walk into the danger. Like, you know.
I think the scariest thing about Slender: The Arrival is like the whole game is pretty good, but the first level, you're in a house and you're walking through a house, and a child has drawn pictures on the wall, like in crayon, of Slender, like in a forest, and it is the scariest thing I ever seen. Because you're like, this is so weird, and it plays with that aspect of it and forces you out into the forest, and then you end up running into Slender and you start playing the pages. So it is very, very good, and I think that also captures it. Now look, we're way past the time of Slenderman being popular, but I think that was the closest we got to something that the internet birth that just belonged in folk, like folklore. I think it's the first proof of the internet creating a folklore character on the level of Irish folklore, Japanese folklore.
You know, is creepypasta the term, or like yeah.
But that's only killed it with the terrible movie. So,
well, then this is what I was going to ask, because I discovered Slender Man kind of through the memification of it, like, you know,
well, that was
Slender Man, but it's Shrek, Slender Man, but is it? How do these things still stay scary once the internet gets its grubby hands on it?
Well, that's the thing.
You know?
It did. It was like Slenderman was quite scary, and the game returns a lot of the terror of it. But what actually finished Slenderman was the movie that came out that wasn't very good, because but you can still go back, you can watch the Marvel Hornets thing.
Well, you say that, but like Five Nights at Freddy's got like memed into the ground, and my daughter still likes it. I still like it. There's something still compelling about that kind of stuff. You know?
I mean, when you go back to the source material, and that's why I'd say if this is your first time hearing about Slenderman, one, I'm shocked, but two, like, go back and check out this game, or go and check out the Marble Hornet series, because you will find like the kernel of what's there. And even you know Five Nights at Freddy's has been memed to death, but like then you go and play the game and you have it there, and it hasn't been corrupted, and it's still scary.
Yeah. I mean, like,
still scary,
even kind of in a more kind of enclosed sort of example, you know, of like the Resident Evil franchise, like kind of almost memed itself to death
through the films, like
through the games series.
Okay.
Through the games, yeah. The films are a whole other thing.
Oh, that's all. Yeah, bag of cats. But like that's like that for those first like 2 or 3 games, you know, are very grounded horror. You know, you're like, you have no power. By game 5, you're punching a boulder in an erupting volcano. But the thing is that the game, like, it hit that point where it was just kind of cresting the atmosphere to go into the space of lunacy. But then between like between its revival of 7 and then the remake of 2, it decided to kind of go back to the roots of what made this franchise like whole and kind of scary. And both of those games are still pretty terrifying.
That's true. Like, so many people, like, I remember when 7 came out, it was just a complete game changer.
Yeah.
It was like people were talking about 2 different franchises, you know, so you can still go back, but it's kind of like we have come full circle, and now we're starting that other kind of loop where it's like, right, we're kind of going back around here, and that's why you're getting so many good games. Like, we will talk about them now in our recommendations, but there's some great super modern games that are out now, as Keane said, even with the Roblox kind of stuff. But even like with Minecraft, with the creepypasta inside of Minecraft, that's still influenced by its folklore surroundings.
Yeah.
And it's wild that that's happening in a virtual world rather than in reality. So, okay, so as I said, there's some recommendations here. So underneath, this list is a little bit old, but I still think it's very, very good. Outlast, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, Dead Space 1, don't bother with the other ones. Soma, Lair of Fear, Resident Evil 7, Condemned, Criminal Origins is completely underrated, and I do think it's wonderful. Even though it's not Japanese, it is very, very good. And then Alien Isolation, which is also not Japanese, but I think they kind of hit all the major points that we've talked about for like mid-tier modern gaming that you should definitely check out. Above it, more recent games: Corpse Party, The Night Way Home, and Yumi Nikki, right?
I'm sorry, Corpse Party.
Yeah.
You can't put a scary word next to a nice word like that without explaining it.
The reason why I picked these 3 is because they're all completely different, but they're all scary in their own way, and it does kind of play on some of the stuff we've talked on before. Yumi Nikki is actually my personal favorite of all 3. Because it is like an exploration of this girl's mental decline as she walks through it. But it plays like, what was that game that came out there? Undertale. It plays,
like a lot of people kind of describe it as like it's a more cerebral horror type of undertaking.
Yeah, so if you like Undertale, which
I found Undertale scary to begin with. So
yeah, it is. This is like imagine that, but it's through this girl's mental purgation,
right?
And it is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
The Night Way Home is in a grocery store, and you're working the late shift, so it's not, you know, I mean, that's scary in and of itself, but you know, that this has a lot of the flash in the pan, ghosty, ghouly kind of thing.
But that's a similar setting, like the Five Nights at Freddy's restaurant, like the thing we mentioned earlier with the burger restaurant. It's familiar setting, but you're stuck in it at night.
I also think we talked about that burger one on the show before.
Okay.
Hamburger or something with
It could be the Roblox version of it. Yeah.
But Course Party, Kev, since you talked about it, explain what Course Party is.
Oh, I've only had like dabbling. I haven't actually played it. But like the whole like you're basically, I think it starts, if I'm remembering it correctly, it's not like it starts off as like going on a school trip, end up in an abandoned building. Somebody has the absolutely wonderful idea to perform a ritual sacrifice, and then things kind of just go downhill from there.
Things go downhill after that.
Yes,
I see. So the evening peaks at the sacrifice.
Yes, yeah. There.
You know what? Like the amount of times I've said, "Oh, you know what? Sacrifice. It's only downhill from here. Get the last bus." You know.
I'm always saying this. And then you hear rock bottom of copper.
Yeah, of course.
One I actually don't have that I forgot to put on the PowerPoint. That like I would actually like to throw in there, specifically in kind of Japanese horror, is a very recent one called World of Horror. It's a small indie game, very, very Japanese based. Like the whole thing takes place like in a small Japanese town. It's a very kind of like 8-bit point-and-click adventure, but it's all very heavily inspired by the works of Junji Ito, which it seems sacrilegious to not mention him talking about Japanese horror.
The holes in the wall guy, yes.
Yeah.
I'm taking the sacrilegious thing off your shoulder there, yes.
But it was kind of hard to find like the exact inlet until now for, you know, his relation to kind of video games. But like a very detailed style of kind of contorted body parts. World of Horror takes that, translates it to like kind of a crispy 8-bit black and white graphic style. And it just kind of like runs through these kind of short point and click stories.
Did I ever tell you that one of the students I teach has a Junji Ito coloring book?
Now, what's crazy is the fact that most of his stuff is in black and white. So, are you sure he just doesn't have a Junji Ito?
I know, but you get to add the blood yourself. Like, it's very relaxing.
Black and white. Are you sure? Are you sure you're not just coloring on a copy of Uzumaki?
Yes, I saw the cover.
So with this slide specifically, there is a list there, and I'm not going to click into it. I'm going to put it underneath. And if you follow us on our social media or on the video, because it's going to be on YouTube, it'll be underneath, and it's a list of a bunch of Japanese creepy horror games. So specifically creepy. And I think that's kind of the element that you're talking about, Kev, where it's just like, you know, instead of it being gross, because the thing about Japanese horror, it's not grossly violent always. It's more creepy, weird, or spooky. The violence is kept to a minimum in lots of places, except when it's for big shocks, you know. So I want to put that list underneath this video as well. So if you're in the crowd, do take a card and you'll be able to see the whole list. But if you're not, just take a picture of it there. And we've reached the question part of the panel. So if anyone has questions, let us know. And if not, we'll have a little talk about the rest of it.
Could I throw in like not sure if it's an example or a question, but just because we're talking about the sort of the influence, like I played from a franchise example now, there was a really good Doctor Who mobile game about 2 years ago where the Weeping Angels, like, you know, the monsters that if you look away from them, they get you.
Yeah.
The entire premise is you have found a phone, and in the lore of it, pictures of a weeping angel become the monster.
Yeah.
And it's basically corrupting the files and trying to climb out of the phone.
Yeah.
So you basically have to go on an adventure looking through this person's text to delete it before it takes over your phone. And similar to like things like the dating sim one we did a panel on a few years ago, the Doki Doki Adventure, if you start losing, it starts messing with the functionality of your real phone in the real world. So, like, my question is, because you've kind of covered it there, but, like, as technology has evolved, has that affected the storytelling of horror from Japanese to America and all that?
Yeah, it has, actually, because I took it out because it's kind of outside the scope of what we were talking about. It's not Japanese, but there's a great game called Dreadout. And Dreadout is a survival horror. It says it's from 2000... Let's see, because I want to play a clip of it, and it actually, and it actually has done that. So it's from Indonesia, right? But the thing about it is, this was directly influenced by the Chinese. Okay, thanks, Markiplier, appreciate it.
Hi, Markiplier.
So, if you have a look here, you can see that like it is very similar to Project Zero, right? Almost the same. But what happened between Project Zero or Fatal Frame and this was everyone got a smartphone. So between those, we didn't have these when Project Zero came out. We had an actual big ass camera And then all of a sudden, we had smartphones. So this game is actually very, very, very similar, if not the same, to Fatal Frame, but from an Indonesian perspective. But everything is done through your phone. So that's a genius point, Kev, Keen, because if this wasn't influenced by modern culture, this never would have happened. But this is one of the best games you can play that isn't Japanese horror. It's very, very similar, and it is spooky as all heck. But the difference is, all you have is your phone. And it's a direct result of exactly what Keane was saying.
It's actually funny because like there's been a kind of there's been a noticeable trend in recent horror to almost set it kind of back pre 2005 a lot of the time, because once you get past that, like with this, most people have a smartphone, so
they can phone for help.
That's most tension gets cut in half when it's like, well, I could just go on Twitter and call the cops. Like,
wasn't there an entire movie filmed on like what's it called, like Zoom as well, like Unfriended or something, like I know that's off topic.
That was the host. Unfriended was through a laptop,
okay.
But like very much in the same way. I think that was an expression of using the technology we have. And there has been actually a couple of games that have done that, but there hasn't really been a horror one that I know just yet that has done that. But there's a game called Tech Support Simulator where you're working as a tech support engineer, and basically you get involved in a hacking conspiracy. So it could be an avenue. It definitely would be. Now, there are some horror games that go on the dark web. So if you're like, you go see like a murder room or whatever. So they do exist. But what's interesting about this is that, like, when I saw this, I had to play it immediately because I was like, oh my God, this sounds exactly like the game I'd be into. And I was right. So if you're looking for something to play, and it is really, really cheap, you can pick up Dread Out. So that's it there. Any other questions that we have?
No.
One to mention that I forgot to talk about when we were talking about the historical aspect of it. Great resource if you're at all interested in classical Japanese horror is Lafcadio Hearn's. I think it's just called the book's called Japanese Ghost Stories, but it's a collection of translated, like, basically Japanese like horror folk tales. I'm getting it mixed up where it's either the guy who localized it recently or Lafcadio Hearn himself was actually an Irishman. If I was smarter about this, I would have researched before the panel, but I'm nothing if not.
If only it was post 2005 and you had a phone in front of you, which you could consult. But alas, what alas.
So what I'd say is, and we'll leave you on this, if the games that are up here on the list are, if you're interested in this at all, they are the games that I would say to absolutely play. Siren, and actually the great thing about these games is if you're on the PSN, a lot of them are free. You can buy them, but they're also free as part of the PlayStation Network. So, Siren, obviously, Fatal Frame, go with Fatal Frame 2. Silent Hill, go with Silent Hill 2. Coon is great, but Rule of Rose is very hard to find, as I said at the beginning. But it is one of the best games you will ever play. And if not, just watch someone play it because it is just phenomenal. And then Siren Blood Curse, that's on the PS3. But they're the games that I think we should actually recommend to anybody who's looking to get into it. And if there's no questions, we're going to leave it there.
Could I actually ask one last thing? Would that be okay? Or are you like eating one for your bus?
Over.
Okay, so you've covered the whole kind of history of horror and gaming like really, really well. But as I said earlier, kind of alluding to the stuff that my daughter watches, a lot of those tropes you've mentioned have become slightly sanitized through kind of Roblox versions or YouTube parodies or all that kind of stuff. My question is, do you think you have an idea of where horror gaming is going next that it hasn't yet?
I genuinely think it's looping around because, like, obviously with these being added to, because again, a lot of these games are like nearly 20 years old, if not more than 20 years old. They're now being added to services like the PSN. So what happens is people play those, younger people play them, then they get into game development and they start emulating it. So I think we're at a cycle where it stagnated a little bit, but then it has found interesting ways to come back out. And particularly with stuff like Steam, the panel before us, the girl was saying that Steam has a lot of trash on it, and it does. So does the Nintendo Network, and they all kind of do. But with the ease of game development being open to everybody, it opens up the field to express yourself more.
Yeah,
So
like Fear and Hunger got popular on Steam. Like we never would have heard of that one, you know?
Absolutely, but like actually, Fear and Hunger is a really good show. It's a whole.
I know that's Russian and not East or West.
It's an expression of like pure Lovecraftian horror through the Russian lens. It's a great game. It's a very tough game. It's not a fun game, but it is a very good game. Anyway, what I mean is, yeah, you're right, Keane. Like, if it wasn't for gaming engines being open to everybody, you would have never given people the tools to make them. So I think that's going to happen. I think what we're seeing now is the resurgence of these kind of smart. I don't want to use smart as an adjective, but that's something of like, more kind of like psychological rather than just pure action. Because we had that. We went through the FPS era, and ever since then it's kind of just been moving towards stuff like Five Nights at Freddy's.
Yeah, because AAA horror like BioShock and stuff doesn't really get made anymore, does it? Like
BioShock, even itself, like even though I love BioShock Infinite, it wasn't as good as BioShock. Absolutely no way. Yeah.
No, but I just meant in terms of like things you see on the shelf.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you going to say?
As we're kind of like we're noticing, at least in terms of things kind of like coming back around, we've noticed the nostalgia cycle of gaming taking its trajectory where like the last decade we saw a lot of like, pixel art. We're now kind of reaching the point where it's much easier for indie developers to make things that for them would be nostalgic of the PS1, of early 3D games. So we're getting a lot of that kind of like more high fidelity versions of those blocky polygonal things. Like a really modern one there is actually Crow Country is a fantastic game.
I was going to say, so on our podcast about a month ago, Kev, you talked about that. So what exactly is Crow Country?
It's a throwback to like early Resident Evil, but with a lot of kind of more modern amenities, where Resident Evil was set like in this large mansion that almost worked like a theme park, considering all the little kind of buttons and hidey holes in it. This is actually in an abandoned theme park.
Yeah.
Where you're trying to go around and find the creator. And much like classic Resident Evil, you have a gun, but the resources are extremely limited. You've got very limited inventory space, and you're just kind of finding your way around. And the theme park element adds to the kind of the puzzle box mechanic where, you have to find the key in the mermaid's lair, right? Unlock the tree grove or X, Y, and Z. But yeah, no, as I said, it's just interesting how we're hitting that kind of nostalgia cycle spin where people are almost loving the fact that the graphics are a little bit awful.
Yeah. Well, that's 30 years is kind of the nostalgia, isn't it?
So with the ease of game development now, and because it's improving all the time, to answer your question, Keane, I do think it will loop back around where we'll probably start seeing more games using the PS2. That's probably the next one. Look, because right now we're at people using the PS1 look. So that would be smart money on that. But again, like it's the fact that these games are for free to a much wider audience than they ever were. Because as I said, to buy a lot of those games new or even secondhand, because new is near impossible, but secondhand, you're looking at least 60 to 80 euros.
Dara, your dream is coming true very soon where people are finally going to have nostalgia for their Dreamcast.
Absolutely. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But look, folks, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much. We're Nerd to Know Media. If you enjoyed what we do, please take a card and subscribe to our YouTube. We'd really appreciate it. And thanks so much for coming along.